All right, all right. Well, welcome back to our second season of Truth and Healing Conversations. Really excited to be with you all on Facebook Live, on Instagram, on all the different platforms. My name is Zeke Cohen. I'm the city councilman for District 1 here in Baltimore, and also the co-chair of the city's trauma-informed care task force. And I am so excited to be back with my good friend and partner in the work, Dr. Melissa Buckley. Hey, Dr. Buckley.
Hey Zeke, I am so happy. My cheeks are kind of hurting right now because I'm just smiling nonstop. And Anne always says that, but I feel that same way. I'm so happy that we are back in this space. Season two, as you said, and we are definitely geared up and ready to have some real talk, truth, and healing conversations in 2021. I have on my Healing City t-shirt. So yeah,
There you
I
go. And I would have thrown mine on, but I was in another meeting and then had to like run home. And anyway, I'm suited, but she got the better shirt. Um, in any case, just as a reminder, and again, welcome to everybody joining us today. We started this series last year when we had just passed the Healing City Act, and we knew that we needed to have some public discourse about the issues that Baltimore was facing related to trauma, related to violence. And then, of course, with the now global pandemic related to COVID-19. And so we had a great first series of conversations, and we're really now back to not only discuss what our challenges are here in Baltimore, but to really lift up and elevate the healers, the leaders, the change makers, the people that are doing the work. Because one of the dynamics that I think we see too much of in our city is we get into this doom cycle where people see all the problems, they see the issues, they see the violence, they see the poverty and the racism. But what we don't see enough of, or what we don't speak enough about, is the many people who are doing the work and doing it in a way that is authentic and real and honest. And to me, Melissa, that is what Baltimore really is. Like that's what feels Baltimore to me, is that it is a city of healers. There are so many folks in so many different spaces who embrace our city, who take it on in all these different really interesting and innovative ways. And to me, that's the piece that doesn't get enough oxygen and enough love in the conversations about Baltimore. And so that's what we hope to do through this series, both today and heading into the future.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think that one of the incredible things about our city is the fact that, yes, there are challenges. There's no question about that. But there are people who have been boots on the ground, who have really given of themselves in some tremendous ways. They give up their time, their resources, they give their heart to this work. And, these are the unsung heroes oftentimes. And so, what I think about the Truth and Healing Conversation series that we're doing, it's not that we are trying to pretend that we don't have our own fair share of challenges, but we do feel that it's important to dispel the myths about Baltimore City and remind Baltimoreans that we're still out here. Every one of us has a role to play. We all got to roll up our sleeves and keep this work going forward.
That's right. And so today I am so excited for two of my absolute favorite human beings on this planet, just two folks who truly exemplify the healing work that Melissa and I just spoke about. So I'm going to introduce them together. Um, Monica Guerrero Vasquez is a member of the Trauma Informed Care Task Force. She is also the executive director of Centro Sol. Centro Sol provides support around healthcare, around safety, around well-being for our immigrant community, particularly for our Latino and Latina community. They have done just extraordinary work throughout and before the pandemic in making sure folks are connected with services and just making sure that for a community that has too often been left off of the healthcare map, that they have access and that they have true spaces to not feel pathologized or stigmatized, but to connect. So it is really an honor and a pleasure to have my friend Monica with us here today. Also joining us, another amazing human, Aya Damons is the executive director of Baltimore Safe Haven. She has been featured on the cover of Time magazine for her extraordinary work on behalf of our LGBTQ community here in Baltimore. They are the only Black trans-led organization, I believe, in the state of Maryland. They provide direct support around housing, health, all kinds of services for our LGBTQ community through a harm reduction approach. They also work to support folks who are engaged in sex work and to help to provide them resources and potentially a path into other employment if that is what they so choose. So again, it is nothing but an honor and a pleasure to welcome my friend Aya to Truth and Healing. So let me start with, we're gonna ask each of you to just tell a little bit about your own story, maybe the 2-minute drill of how you got to Central Soul and how you got to Safe Haven. Because I think for both of you, the work is very personal and comes from a very real and authentic place. And so maybe starting with you, Monica, if you could just introduce yourself and share a little bit about how you got into this work around Central Soul and what it means to be doing this kind of work for you.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Muchísimas gracias por la invitación. Gracias por darme el espacio para poder compartir el trabajo que hago, el trabajo que hago en Centro Sol y por poder compartir la experiencia que hemos tenido durante la pandemia. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity and the space to talk about the work that we do at Central Soul and to share a little bit about our experience in the community and my personal experience as an immigrant too. I am an immigrant from Ecuador. I didn't know I was Latina until I came to the US. My family migrated when I was a child. I was 10, 11. I was separated from my parents for a year, but when you're 10, that is a long time. I took responsibilities of my siblings and the house very early. I was a mom. I was the second mom after my mom left, and that moment was a definition of the rest of my life. I grew up thinking, I don't want other kids to go through this. I wish I can connect with my roots again. I wish I can go back. I wish I can go back in time and not let it happen. But I'm the first person in my family to have a dream of having a career and going to college. And my mom will always tell me, you have to go to college, you have to have education, because that's gonna take you from poverty, that's gonna prevent domestic violence, that's what's gonna give you freedom. And I believed her, and think ever since my parents left to find a better future for our family, my dream was to go to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know how it looked like. I didn't know what it was. All I knew is that it was going to be my ticket to freedom, I guess. And fast forward, in 2011, I had to leave my home in Spain and I came to Baltimore. Since 2011, Baltimore has become my home. And that dream and passion to find my community and find my identity, I connected with Latinos in Baltimore City. My background is computer science, so nothing to do with the traditional social service path. I love science, I love math, and it seemed that I was pretty good at it when I was in high school. So I became a computer science engineer. But my career shifted a little bit when I moved to Baltimore, and I became public health servant. So I've been working with Latinos every day and night, literally, since I came here. And I will not change a second of all the work that I have been doing here. So I started volunteering with Esperanza Center. I started running workout groups, trying to bridge the gap, because I learned there was a huge gap. I speak English, I speak Spanish, and to me, it was very difficult to navigate the health system. I was uninsured for a period of time until I got my immigration status, but not everyone has the luck, I guess, that I had, because the system is so restrictive and prosecutes immigrants. And I think it prosecutes poverty, actually. So, I was able to become a U.S. citizen, and I cannot change anything of what I do. I wish I can do more, and I think that's the sense of many people doing grassroots work here in Baltimore. It's a vibrant city. It's a city that can be home to anybody. It has a lot of potential, but there are a lot of inequities that we all need to work together to fight. So I'm not sure, Councilman Cohen, if I answer your question. I like talking.
That was perfect. And again, just really glad that you did make Baltimore your home, and it's an honor to get to work with you on our trauma-informed care task force. And just thank you for all your leadership. Certainly means the world to to some of our newer neighbors. So glad to have you here with us.
Great. Thank you so much, Monica. I would welcome the opportunity to discuss some of those dynamics even further with you at another time. I too am an immigrant, but my immigrant story is different because I was born in Toronto, Canada, and because English is my first language, I have not experienced some of the very obvious discrimination that non-English speaking immigrants experience. Unlike you, I'm not a citizen, I'm a permanent resident, but I am very sensitive to the challenges that the immigrant community experience. And then on top of that, my parents are Jamaican, so I understand, some of the cultural things that we bring with us into these spaces. We should talk about food and stuff like that some other time, though. But I'm so glad that you're here. All right, Sister Girl Aya, we would love to hear from you. We are so happy that you are here with us today. As Zeke mentioned, you are the founder of the first, as it said, the first of its kind, a trans-led organization, the first here in Maryland. So I'm not even going to take up your time. I want you to tell us about yourself and your incredible story and why you're here today.
Everyone, thank you for having me here. This is a healing city for all. I'm so thankful to be here. For me, I think the broken infrastructures here in my own city that I called home. So that spoke out to me. I was a survival sex worker here in Charles Village. I was one of the people who looked like the people that I served. Like, you know what I mean? So it was personal to me. I had to learn everything on the job to be the woman I am today. So that means going to nonprofit management, going to business administration school. I'm learning that on the job today as a lived experience executive director. So what hurt them hurts me. So I do a lot of advocacy and activism behind that, because what I see is we're dying at an alarming rate. The infrastructures are broken. There's a lack of resources everywhere. So when I noticed that I couldn't get help to get out of an addiction, I knew it was time for me to step up with the community and take my fight onto the streets. So I'm there on the front lawns doing the work right in front of City Hall. And every time that there is a death of a trans individual, I am there. We show up because they have to expect someone, and we can only expect ourselves at this time. So we're healing right along with everyone else here in Baltimore City. As I seen those broken infrastructures right where I called home, I seen no adequate services for people who look like me. There was nothing here, no one I can turn to say, hey, I can't sleep tonight, I have nowhere to go. I was falling into all of these places that I couldn't get myself from the ground. So I became the boots on the ground for the community, something that people could look and pour into and feel like I'm pouring back into them. So we're like a big family over here as the trans community is doing this work. So we have a harm reduction palliative program, is to get to the grassroots of what's happening to our own communities. People love us when we're trending, but we're nobodies when we're not trending. When we're murdered in the streets, and that's when everybody's coming and say, hey, everyone, how are you in the trans community? But we're gonna be here. So we made the time cover. That's something I told the tabloids, because the tabloids means nothing to me. A lot of things that stands out to me is a young girl coming to me and say, guess what? I have a home now because of you. That stands out to me. Like, so I just felt like I had to set out and do something. So as I educated myself, I moved along, and I noticed that during COVID-19, it hit Black trans communities harder because a lot of them rely on sex work. It's a generational curse for our community to do survival sex work, and that we really had nowhere to go. Most of our community, 80% of our community are survival sex workers. So it's a generational curse.
Can you just share what survival sex work means for our audience?
Survival sex work is when you feel like that's your only option. Your first option is to do sex work. You ever had a gender dysphoria youth come out at 13 to 14 and their mom put them out because they didn't understand that they were gender dysphoria. So they're put out in the streets to try to figure out their lives, which leads to STDs, STIs, HIV, drinking, addiction, etc., mental health, you name it. We're going through it here in our own backyard. But what people fail to understand, until we get to the grassroots issues of what's happening, we're doing nothing for the core of the work. So that's where we come in, boots on the ground, dedicated with the harm reduction palliative program in the streets. We're the only LGBTQ harm reduction palliative program that's designed for us, and by us. So that's, history being made. Transphobia is here, in places where we're trying to get jobs, resources, and things like that. So it's kind of harder for us, but we get through it. We provide vocational training, direct services such as education, resources, simple laundry, showers, you name it. During COVID-19, we have been on the ground ever since it hit. We've changed a couple policies, but we remained on the ground because our people needed us the most. They had no one to call on. So as many families are healing from trauma and violence from their children, their uncles, their aunts, however they pronoun, they need us. So we're there in support for the community that needs us. So we're all healing together in one big city together as Baltimore. There's no place we'd rather call home, but we're here together. We're healing all together. As Baltimore Safe Haven pushes advocacy and activism in our own backyard, we need support from the community at large. But guess what? Like Zeke has us here, we're healing together. And I'm going to leave it there.
I feel like.
Just kidding, I'm on mute. Always appreciate Aya and the passion that she brings into this work, and just the honesty. It's I think an extraordinary amount of lives that you've been able to impact and touch. And again, I think sometimes as a city, we don't do enough to honor the Monikas and the Ayas that are in the work. We sort of, focus on our issues and our challenges, or we, turn to the celebrities, but not the grassroots folks that are on the ground. And so I just appreciate both of you. So I got a question, but I want to maybe go to my friend, Dr. Buckley, first, and then jump in.
Okay, sure thing. So both of you actually kind of touched on COVID and your response. And of course, our conversation today is about like life. I don't want to say life after COVID, because what is that? COVID is here and it's always going to be here. But I would like to hear from you both. Tell us what some of the key challenges that COVID-19 presented. Aya, you just talked about the realities of the sex work and how that impacted the LGBTQ community. And so Can we hear from you both Aya and Monica? What were some of the key COVID-19 challenges for your respective communities?
For the trans community and the LGBTQ community, we saw a lot of people that could not get shelter during this time. That was one of the biggest challenges. And then for survival sex workers who had to be out there because that's how they got an income. And we had to continue to do outreach, bring out meals, bring out PPE supplies for them. So that was two of the challenges, and being able to bring them into our center. And then we had to put in like the 6 feet requirements from them. So we only had to let one person in when everybody was like, no, we were like, guess what? We're going to put our masks on and we're going to get to this work. So that was challenging for us to see that we could not give them the services that they needed at the time. Like, how could we shelter you at this time if you didn't have a test? You know what I mean? But we knew we still had to be boots on the ground. Like, we had to really do the work because they had nowhere to go. Like at that time. So what we were supposed to do, say we were gonna close our doors at that time. So no, we poured into the work, but that was challenging for an organization to be able to, witness something that we have never witnessed before. As COVID-19 is something I've never saw. Like, I've saw it on the movie, but I've never seen anything like this, up close and personal. So I'm going to say that's the challenge that we faced, making sure that we gave out the services still during that time, but we made it happen.
Zeke, you're muted.
Just kidding. And they really did. Sorry, Monica. Just want to just really quickly, in terms of Safe Haven, they managed to transition. They were in one space. I had the pleasure of visiting them, and then they got a whole new shelter, and they've just been able to, in a really nimble kind of way, dealing with the restrictions around social distancing and all the rest, been able to put up homeless trans young people. And that is just such an important service for our city, knowing, to Aya's point, that too often those young people are put out of their homes and face very serious health and safety challenges on the streets. Apologies, Monica. Just wanted to share a little bit about what I've seen from Safe Haven as well. But I know that you all also have had to pivot significantly during COVID, given the population that you serve.
Actually, Monica, and I want to apologize. I'm so sorry, but it just occurred to me that we might need to offer some of our listeners some clarity around terms. So Aya, because sometimes we conflate the terms. Can you give us the definition, if you will, about as far as trans and LGBTQ, just to ensure that our listeners are aware?
Well, I put the T in the front because the leadership is from the trans community, such as myself, and it's rare that you have a trans woman in leadership like Aya, and then you will go gay, lesbian, bisexual, and queer. My pronouns are she and her. But we also we have individuals who are non-binary too as well. So we want to make sure that we keep every pronoun out there and calling people by their pronoun, because you can prevent a person from killing themselves. Suicide is preventable.
Now you're muted. All right, so appreciate the clarity on terms. Monica, talk to us about what the work has been like during COVID.
Yeah, sure. So just wanted to point out in terms of challenges, there was a big delay in response to non-English and immigrant communities because, and there's a term that I keep hearing that really describes where this community is they are left out of even the marginalized groups. So they are the last from the last, the poorest from the poor. And when our work has been focused on understanding and identifying where could be opportunities for equity in this community. And when COVID hit, we all hear terms like disproportionate impact or exacerbated barriers in the community. But what that really meant is they had nothing. They had nothing, to the point that there was and our work came to really respond directly the needs of the local community, and particularly Southeast, South, and West Baltimore. As you know, Councilman Cohen, we were working in partnership, and that's something that I brag about. It's how easy communities, faith-based organizations, individuals, community leaders, neighborhood associations, and our elected officials in the area have been responding to our asks and requests for help. So the easy thing that we were able to do, or the easy go-to responses were in terms of food and information. We developed a network to distribute food that was culturally appropriate, and that's something that we can talk about later for a long time. But offering there was food response in the city overall. There have always been meals, but you don't eat what you don't know how to prepare, or you don't eat what is not appropriate for your house. And usually I hear comments like, but if you're hungry, you eat anything. That is not true. If you're hungry, you still have dignity. And we have to provide that dignity and respect the dignity of our neighbors. So we were working for every day, literally every day at the beginning of the pandemic to provide our response and provide meals to individuals. The response lines were not available in Spanish, and majority of the Latinx communities in the city are newly arrived or are still English learners. And for them, and they are also essential workers. So for them, like a hotline where they have to wait for 40, 45 minutes for someone to come. If they come and answer in Spanish, it's just unreasonable and unfair. So we were trying to respond to that and develop an app called Rapid Baltimore that included that gather information. It was a low data app. Those are best practices from low and middle income countries. And that was like my computer science background. So we were looking into how to develop something similar in the city that people without smartphones or without reliable data or internet access could find information about COVID-19 and later about the vaccines. But during that process, we were also gathering information about housing, about rent assistance, about cash assistance, because as you know, families with mixed immigration status were not receiving stimulus checks at the beginning of the pandemic when the first checks that came out. And the state is still not responding to families with mixed immigration status. So that is very hard. That is just an example of how inequity operates in our society. We explicitly leave out individuals from any services, from any support. And I'm very happy to have this conversation with Aya and learn more about the work that they are doing in their organization, because I think we can speak about the same things and just change the public or the audience that we're working with, but the inequities are very similar. So with information and food, we were able to collaborate with other organizations to channel and support people in finding their ways and finding resources that.
Oh. Go ahead. You want to jump in?
Possible. I've noticed also as I started doing some outreach over in Harlingen, the Conklin area, that we had to reach out to other organizations such as, like yours as well. So we put together a bilingual outreach worker. So that might be something that you and I can connect with off camera for a moment. So we do have a bilingual outreach worker. Quickly. Hola, ¿qué tal? Mucho gusto.
Hey, ¿cómo estás? Hi.
So I wanted to let you know we're here and we're worried about our community also as well, immigrant community as well. So just reach out to me and we can connect after this.
I love that. Let's always want to be a platform in our truth and healing conversations for great organizations to connect. I think one of the things we sometimes struggle with in Baltimore is knowing who we all are within the different spaces. And I really think there is a lot of overlap, particularly like Monica was saying, when we're talking about uninsured, undocumented folks, just marginalized, beyond marginalized, as well as our trans community. And that's actually a point I wanted to pick up on, which is I think that over the last few years, as we come out of not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but just the destruction and chaos of the Trump presidency, and all that was wrought, particularly upon immigrant and LGBTQ communities, and other marginalized communities, I think we're now in a situation where our immigrant neighbors and particularly our trans neighbors have been deeply politicized, have been almost used as like a political punching bag by folks on the right. We look at laws around the country to remove trans folks from being able to play sports in their correct gender, from restrictive bathroom bills. We look at states that, again, really clamp down. And Monica made this point that, initially through COVID, our uninsured, undocumented neighbors were not able to get many, if any, of the federal benefits that everyone else is receiving. I think a lot of what sort of the former president has done and the ideology that undergirds him is to say that these people are subhuman, be they trans, be they undocumented, be they LGBTQ, and they're in a class of their own, and we are going to make life as restrictive as is humanly possible and as miserable as is humanly possible. I'm really proud that in Baltimore, we are a welcoming city. We've been really, really clear time and again that we welcome everyone that wants to contribute. And, that in so many ways, we support and love the people that live here, be they Black, white, Jewish, LGBTQ, straight, immigrant. And we have a long way to go ourselves, as Aya often points out to me, in truly honoring all of Baltimore, particularly its most vulnerable members. But we are a community that at the end of the day embraces its people. So I was wondering if you both could speak a little bit about Baltimore, and particularly like what home means to you in the context that you both live in. Monica, having mentioned your immigrant story and how you came here, and then Aya, as a trans person, as a former sex worker, what does it mean? What does home mean? And what does it mean to call Baltimore home in this moment of fraught politicization where certain bodies are really marginalized across our country? Maybe start with Aya.
There's no place I would rather call home than Baltimore City. It's challenging sometimes as a Black trans woman to be able to say that this is my home, but I believe in my home, as I believe in every council member and person who comes in as mayor. But the trauma that we're seeing is real. Like, the lack of having is unreal. Like, you know what I mean? So sometimes I don't know how to feel. Like, you know what I mean? As a trans woman, I just don't. And that brings a touching kind of space to me, because I can't say, like, I march for my community at an all-time high. Like, Zeke, I thank you. I thank Christopher Barnett. I thank the mayor, for doing the things that they can do. History has been made, a week ago when we signed in the bill. Like, we're getting there, but it's taken a lot of shouting, a lot of hollering, a lot of changing the narrative to do that. So in a place I call home, do I really feel like I fit where I call home? I love Baltimore because I'm able to understand who I am as a trans person, but the generation, the carbon footprint behind me has to understand that I was here. And the reason I was here was to be able to create the infrastructures that are seen to be broke. I don't really want to say that this is a place I call home. I mean, we're a healing city. That's what I'm going to say. We're a healing city. I mean, I think our city can do better. You know what I mean? Like, and you're building that, infrastructure, you're there, but sometimes it's hard for us trans Black just individuals to feel like this is designed for us. Is really Baltimore the place that's designed for us? But we're making historical changes, even if they gotta expect us every time, as you always see. But kind of tough on that question there, and I'm not gonna filter it out. Like, you know what I mean? This is where we call home, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it's designed for us. Like, you know, and I see you're changing that with Healing City, but I only gotta be direct. Do we really call this home? Do we really fit in Baltimore City as the trans community? Who's hearing our cries? You know, but we'll still march. You still can expect us. When we're tired, we got us. And thank you, and the other council members for putting that out there, you know, but can't really give you that answer.
That was real. I truly appreciate that response, because the reality is, when you are an activist at whatever level of activism you are, you know, we understand that you're the voice of advocacy, but you're advocating on behalf of yourself as well. And the duality in that is exhausting. And I hear it and I see you. That I thank you for your transparency, Aya.
Thank you, Aya. And I'm gonna say that there is no space for everyone until everyone has a space. It's like there's no freedom for everyone until everyone is free. And I feel that yeah, that I hear you and I feel you, and I think we have a long way and we have a lot of work to do. And as hard as it is sometimes, I do appreciate people like you doing work in the ground and supporting individuals, but also I appreciate the leadership that is supporting movements, policy change and actions that, you know, end corruption and promote equity and leverage communities, marginalized communities of color in our city. I think we have a history to learn from that we haven't yet learned from. We have a history of discrimination, of policies that exclude certain communities from housing, from social services that are still are with us today, and recognizing that and learning from them and fighting to change those, the history that has been chasing us is our duty now, and we need to work together. It's not easy, certainly not easy, but it's not impossible, and we just need that opportunity, and we need allies to support the fight that we have in our community. Yeah, we have a history that we have to correct, and we cannot correct until we teach, until we all learn how Baltimore has and is being impacted by that history of discrimination and policy discrimination. Personally, I am very grateful for Baltimore, because they opened arms to me and gave me opportunities of personal and professional growth, and opportunity to serve my mom and my dad through the families I serve in Baltimore. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And I'm very committed to continue working for that equity and health and opportunities for our Latino community.
Thank you for that response, Monica. There are some things I've been writing like crazy, the things that you both have shared with us. And before I ask the last question, I just want to reflect on some of these powerful statements that you both made. Monica, at the very beginning, you talked about education being the ticket to freedom. But of course, we understand that there is some inequity when it comes to education. Everybody doesn't get the same access to education. And then you talked about the fact that it seems, it feels, well, the reality is that immigrants are prosecuted, but poverty is prosecuted. And what we're talking about today is a persistent and a pervasive state of poverty that has desecrated both communities represented here today, the Latinx community and the LGBTQ trans community. I really loved it at the beginning when you talked about healing city for all, because at the core, that's what this is. We're not talking about one small pocket of Baltimore City healing. We believe that everybody has experienced hurt and trauma, and therefore we all deserve to be a part of a healing city. Monica, a moment ago, you just said, it's not easy, but it's not impossible. And that brought tears to my eyes because you're absolutely right. This work is not easy. There's not a single thing about this work that is easy. But as each of us know that are on this call today, and for our listeners, we know that it's not impossible. Okay, I heard it. I know you guys heard it too. um, but we know that it's not impossible, and that's what keeps us coming back to this work. And so I believe that we have to support one another. We have to ensure that we are not restricting ourselves to these silos, but we are really lifting up the efforts. We can't do this work independently. We must support and depend on each other if we have a chance at making healing possible. The last question that I want to pose to you both is, what does recover, rebuild, and reimagine, which is our theme for our discussion today, what does recover, rebuild, and reimagine mean for the Latinx community and for the LGBTQ community?
Recovery is not challenging. It can happen. We see the brighter future. We see our council members trying to heal the city. We're thankful. We're imagining a place, that's beautiful, that includes us, that's inclusive to the trans community, not just Black, all. I believe in the power of the city that can heal us. As Zeke brings to us all the time, I believe it. He's there. The community is there. I believe if we worked it out, we could get there. As a whole ship together, I believe that we can heal ourselves. Healing is available here in Baltimore. I just think it's going to take some time, but we're learning to heal.
I'm going to put it in Spanish. So, recuperar, reconstruir, y reimaginar. Those start with re. That means restart or start again. And unfortunately for our community, sometimes there's no way to restart because they have never had that. And just to give a personal example, like the only way I was able to dream and to build was because I was given an opportunity to do that. And we see often how our policies in our communities don't allow for that. So when I ask our community members how they see the recovery, they cannot think about benefits or services or support because they have not been receiving that ever. And they don't think or feel themselves as entitled to receive that. So the way that I wish we can recover, rebuild, and reimagine is providing the opportunities first to our communities, to all of them, to everyone, so that they can have the opportunity to build and receive and gain and thrive in our society. There are things that we can learn from the pandemic that I hope we can implement in the years to come.
Awesome. What a beautiful way to close us out today. And, just reflecting on some of what we've heard, I think you're both absolutely right. It really is. We have to imagine a different, more connected world, that, where we're all seen, we're all included. And to me, I think about what you both said in terms of this work being intersectional and about us. And no one, like I had said, no one is healing if we're not all healing. And that means our trans brothers, sisters, and siblings. That means our immigrant community, be they documented, undocumented. That means everyone. That means all of us together. So again, this has been just a really, really amazing first conversation of our second series in Truth and Healing. It is just the greatest honor and pleasure to get to call you both my friends and colleagues in the work, and always to Dr. Buckley as well, who is just an extraordinary talent and human in her own right, and someone who is just moving our city forward in ways that humble but powerful. So again, thank you all for making the time today. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. We are so pumped to be back. Melissa, Dr. Buckley, and I will be doing this moving forward, hosting these conversations. And again, I just want to say thanks to all for being a part of this work and for helping to bring us a healing city. Dr. Buckley, you want to close us out?
Thank you both so very much. You were both determined to make me cry on today. How are we going to start our friendship off by you making me cry? What's up with that? But I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your fight. And I'm looking forward to continuing this work together. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to all of our listeners. We look forward to doing this again on next Wednesday. Take good care. We'll see you then.
See you.